You may have heard in the news that Victoria has become the first state in Australia to legalise the medicinal use of cannabis. So will the bill that passed through Victorian State Parliament yesterday address some of the needs that people who are using medicinal cannabis here in Tasmania have been talking about? Let's speak with one of them. Lynn Cleaver is from Launceston, and she's spoken openly about growing medicinal cannabis for her son Jeremy. Lynn, good afternoon.
Hello, how are you?
Really well. First of all, what do you think of the bill that passed through Victorian State Parliament yesterday?
I think it's a good step forward. It's a bit disappointing that it's such a small target group, just the paediatric epilepsy. It's a bit of a shame that the target group is not, to encompass more conditions, but it is a good start.
Why do you think they would have only addressed paediatric epilepsy?
I'm not too sure, honestly, but I think perhaps a lot of the studies that are taking place with some of the bigger pharmaceutical companies out of the UK and places like that, I think they're directed mainly at paediatric epilepsy, and I guess it's driven by demand. Maybe the people that speak the loudest in Victoria are those with epilepsy. I'm honestly not sure.
So when you look at the bill and the wording of this bill, what doesn't it address for you?
I think it's very restrictive. From what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing, I think it will be single compound cannabinoids, which is a bit of a concern. In order to see the real benefit from cannabis, you need to have a broad cannabinoid profile, whole plant access to the plant, and also for people to be able to access the raw plant in order to juice, which is extremely beneficial to your health. So hopefully it doesn't include synthetics, and hopefully they move beyond single compound treatments.
That sort of detail, single compound cannabinoids or more broadly, is that included in the legislation? Is there that sort of detail in there?
I couldn't tell you, sorry. I'm not sure. As far as I understand, I don't think they've made it clear what preparations they plan to use.
Today too, also the Tasmanian Labor Party has talked about its policy on legalising medicinal cannabis, and amongst that it talks about decriminalising the possession and use of cannabis for medicinal purposes for people with severe epilepsy, also multiple sclerosis, cancer, HIV, AIDS treatment and severe chronic pain where approved by 2 specialists, with other conditions to be considered by an independent medical advisory committee. What's your take on the Tasmanian Labor Party's policy?
I think we've been really impressed with the support from the Labor Party. They've been very open and they've been engaging with patients across Tasmania that use medicinal cannabis. I think it's quite a large scope that they're looking at, which is really great. And because at the moment, we've been told we've got this sort of quasi agreement that medicinal cannabis users won't be prosecuted, but that is not really much help to us if we can't grow it and cultivate it and grow the medicines ourselves. So, everything about cannabis at the moment in Tasmania is illegal, regardless of whether Will Hodgman said we won't be prosecuted.
What does it mean for you then, day to day, if you've been told you won't be prosecuted, not having this legal framework around it?
It's something that sits in the back of our minds, You see a police car and you automatically get a lump in your throat. And for a lot of people, that risk is too great. We have people come to us and they say, look, I've been living with pain for 50 years, like little old women and men, that have been suffering their whole lives but are too fearful of the law to access medicinal cannabis. So it's quite prohibitive, could I say, not having that protection for Tasmanians who use it legitimately.
The state government says that it's close to more announcements on the future of medicinal cannabis in the state. What do you expect the government's announcements might be?
I have no idea, because at the moment the government won't engage with people on medicinal cannabis. They're refusing to answer our questions, so I couldn't advise you on that. But I can tell you that Tasmanians deserve access to whole plant. We don't want GMO, we don't want single compound cannabinoids, and we certainly don't want synthetic cannabis preparations. And Tasmanians deserve to have legislation to protect them.
The approach that the Labor Party is taking, would that deal with those issues you mentioned about whole plant and single compound cannabis?
I think initially it will be small steps. I think, at least they're looking at doing something, as opposed to the Hodgman government who refused to be engaged or do anything other than sign the MOU. So I think it's a start, and the advice I've been given is that Labor would expand on that as time goes by. But the decriminalisation for possession and use is massive.
Lynn Cleaver, thanks so much for your time this afternoon.
No worries, thank you.